Right, so I want to talk about 327, 0.4, and a little bit about the character that I'm playing. With 327 on the balance side, GGG promised ballistic balance changes. Suffice to say, we didn't get that. I would have to say 327 is more or less the usual GGG balance patch, where nothing major really happens at all. They killed Volcanic Fissure of Snaking, gave a few minor buffs to some skills and some buffs to ones, and that's about it. Volcanic Fissure was really popular and it was really good. However, it's still sad that it got killed because in the past 7 years or so, it's been the only good elemental slam skill. And now that it's dead, there is literally no good Ellie slam skill left. The rest aren't even close to being good. So yeah, that kind of sucks. To give credit where credit is due, the new Foulborn uniques do add a decent amount of variety to gameplay and some tools to some builds. It's kind of hard putting hundreds of new uniques in the game and not having a few of them stick. But it's always good to see new uniques in the game. These huge unique patches, they're always like decent at something. On the content side, however, 327 does something never seen before. We got an entire league dedicated to a rework, redesign, and revision of a previous league. And my feelings towards this are kind of mixed. On paper, I do not dislike them revisiting old stuff and reworking it. I would definitely like to see them doing this again with some other leagues in the future. I think Harbinger is the first one that comes to mind. But in this particular case, I feel like it has been somewhat of a swing and a miss. The tree is nice, however, it's a bit too powerful when it comes to the crafting aspects of it, and when it comes to the gameplay side, I can't help but feel like this league is just a straight downgrade. It does look better, but the defend variant of the breach in maps just feels off, and the normal breach makes you return to the middle at the end, which I don't see the point of. I will say this, the issue with the league might be that scarabs for it do not exist, neither do Atlas passive points. A lot of my complaints about the league could be solved by scarabs and or passive points, and a lot of like diversity issues with the league. It just kind of feels straightforward, not very interesting. That also could technically be fixed by scarabs or the Atlas passive tree. The biggest question I have about the league is why? Why do we get a rework of a league in PoE 1 when PoE 2 is supposed to be the game that kind of redesigns combat and gameplay? The fact that we get this in PoE 1 to a league that doesn't necessarily need it, at least not as much as some other ones, feels off. I'm not saying PoE 1 doesn't deserve new and shiny stuff, all I'm saying it's just hard doing mechanical reworks of leagues in PoE 1 because you are very likely to upset the fans the league has gotten over the years. The reward structure for the league is mostly fine, it's just the gameplay side feels off for me. Either way, in spite of the mixed feedback and questionable retention this league, I do, however, hope that GGG doesn't get reluctant about making these reworks in the future, because there are some other mechanics that need it more, and they need to be looked at both in PoE 1 and PoE 2. So I definitely like to see that. Speaking of PoE 2, 0.4 is shaping up to be a big patch. We get the much expected Druid, a new Val-themed expansion, and if the devs keep their promises, we will get a big endgame rework. Now that's quite a lot of stuff, but honestly, it does feel like this particular PoE 1 has been maybe somewhat of a throwaway league. It feels like it wasn't as bountiful in terms of like the amount of content. So maybe that just means that there's just gonna be more time for them to do stuff on PoE2. PoE2 is just gonna have a way bigger patch than we expected, because again, the 327 patch was, I wouldn't want to call it slop, but it was somewhat bad. And somewhat like small-ish, right? Either way, we're very likely to see Trial of the Ancestors as well, which is very nice. Not because of the mechanic itself, but because it gives us a pretty big power boost in the campaign. Right now, for the third ascendancy, you have to wait until endgame. That sucks because you are delayed 15 to 20% power boost or whatever the character gets from the third ascendancy point. After Torah comes out, we will get that power boost in Act 4 instead of early maps. This will feel really good for people that are still complaining about campaign length. Also, a lot of people will get through the campaign for the second time this time around, and they will feel much better about their experience. After the campaign last league, a lot of people, and myself included a little bit, felt a bit bad about the length, but I personally leveled like 4 characters last league, and the more characters I did, the better and better I felt. Second character specifically felt miles better. Not because of the build, mind you, okay? Just because I knew the layout somewhat and I knew what to do and where to go. So I shaved out a whole lot of time, and I actually enjoyed leveling. Anyways, I do hope they keep their promise about endgame, as right now, the endgame is by far the worst part about PoE2. 0.3 and, in spite of what people say, 0.2 have been have made massive improvements to almost every part of the game. But right now, the endgame suffers from a massive diversity issue. I just don't think there is a world in which you can have a PoE game and not have scarabs in the game or their functionality in some way. Same with the big Atlas tree. These things need to be in the game, or their functionality needs to be in the game for the endgame to be considered worthy. As far as the Val themed expansion, it is very nostalgic. PoE 1 in its infancy got a Val themed expansion as its first big one, and it set the tone for the next like years to come, right? GGG said they kind of wanted Val skills in the game at some point in the past in one of the interviews. So hopefully that sticks. Hopefully we get those. And hopefully we will get some new endgame pinnacle bosses and some uniques. Hopefully good ones, because we're missing that. Yeah, as far as Druid goes, we have a bunch of Druid gameplay out there. But it's all like years old at this point, and judging by the fact that Druid got delayed so much, I'm definitely expecting the class to look a lot different from the past and do just kind of like be, in a way, do similar things but reworked in a way, right? Revisioned. Yeah. Character. What's my character? So I am playing a Glacial Hammer of Shattering Warden. I looked at Warden because I wanted to do stuff with tinctures, and honestly, I'm kind of surprised. So, Sap of the Seasons is the first thing that I looked at, and this thing used to be very good in the past. Let's take this off. Yeah, anyway, this unique was very briefly very good and very popular. When it got introduced, it was uncapped. So you could get to penetrate as many resistances as you want. That is essentially infinite damage. people used the druggery and got a bunch of life recovery from flasks, and they managed to sustain this tincture for, you know, five fucking thousand flasks, 5,000 stacks. That is not possible anymore. However, it's still possible to get to the maximum of 200, and that is a huge power boost. Like, you're just like tripling your damage or something with that. So I wanted to pick Warden just because I've never played a Warden before. It also does have some tincture stuff, right? And I wanted to look at some elemental skills. I actually okay. I actually ended up picking Glacial Hammer of Shattering with Marlene's Fallacy, right? And Glacial Hammer of Shattering is one of the few elemental strike skills in the game that is actually decent. Every third hit is a guaranteed crit, and that is really nice because it means you somewhat don't have to invest into crit chance. You can just leave it as is, and it's decent enough. Marlene's Fallacy obviously makes it so you have 48% less critical strike chance, which we don't care about because we guarantee a crit on the third hit, and it gives you a massive global crit multi boost. Massive, massive, massive global crit multi boost. So I paired these two up. That's nothing new, and it's nothing good in a way, right? Like, I just paired them up because I wanted to, not because it would be the best for the character. It does, again, it does feel good. It's a decent strike skill, right? Tinctures, I'm using Sap of the Seasons, and I'm using this, like, just for the attack speed. It's attack speed tincture, right? There's nothing else that is good to get in here, and that's perhaps one of the issues with tinctures, is that you don't have a lot of in you don't have a lot of good stuff to pick from. The first one, obviously, you can get, and it's good stuff like Sap of the Seasons, LA damage with attacks, right? Obviously good. Pen, obviously good. But as far as the second one goes, I'm just using this for the attack speed, and that's it. So it is a bit eh, but it is a lot of damage. I'm picking up some tincture passives on the tree. I'm getting to 100%, or I think even more now, tincture effect. I picked up these two right here for 8 and 10. I have these two right here for like another 20% effect. I anointed colloidal mixture, 30%, right, under circumstances, which I definitely, I'm doing that. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then I'm picking this wheel up for tincture effect, right? 100% effect just means that Sap of the Seasons, I only need to get half the stacks in order to get full benefit, essentially. So all of these things, right? All of these things in here with tincture quality, which I don't have because I somewhat quit this character early, 95. It just means that I get to have like really good uptime. You can see here. There we go. I get to press the tinctures, and yeah, they get to stay there for a long, long time. As far as sustaining the mana burn, it's interesting. In the past, people used Blood-Soaked Blade to sustain the mana burn. Historically, mana regen has been much harder to get than life recovery, right? So, like, life regen, it's much easier to replenish your life than it is to replenish your mana, right? Usually. So what people used to do is they would just used to get a bunch of life recovery from one of the million ways you can do that, and use Blood-Soaked Blade. What I did instead is I went for a very interesting mechanic which nobody talked about until a few days ago, maybe like a week ago. Unlucky. and that is mana burn inflicts it inflicts mana reduction, or like it siphons your mana based on your maximum mana. So does it? Oh yeah, right there. If you read that, it says mana burn causes you to lose 1% of your maximum mana per stack per second. What this means is that if my mana is really low, then I don't lose a whole lot of mana, right? So I am reducing my mana as much as I can. There's not a lot of ways to do this. There's like very few ways to do this, right? But the thing that I went for is Nexus gloves, 30% reduce maximum mana, and then a couple of these reflected rings. Not much good came out of League of Kalandra, I will say that much. But these rings are definitely interesting. You can get stuff like this, which is like almost 300 life, minus mana, minus wind, which I don't care about. I'll talk about in a bit. Mana regenerate, I obviously love that as well. And all res. This one's a bit worse. I paid like 1 divine for these. These are like, this is very cheap gear that I have. So yeah, I'm reducing my maximum mana, and as far as regen goes, a lot of regen in the game is percent based, which obviously doesn't help because I have a low percentage. However, one form of regen that isn't percent based is clarity. Clarity is flat mana per second, which just means that the lower I stack the mana, the bigger this flat percentage is compared to my mana pool, and the more I can sustain my flasks. This combination is probably not the best way to do mana reduction. I'm aware of this. I was aware of this before making the character. It just suits my particular character. The best way to do this would be to get a, a militant fate. Militant fate. With one of these on it. I don't know which one. One of the passives reduces your max mana by 80%. So that's pretty much all you need. You can just completely ditch these Nexus gloves, and you can get some really nice implicits in there. And then alongside one of these rings, and you're done. And you have like fucking zero mana. Also, Militant Fate rolls flat mana a regen on it as one of the implicits. I'm aware of that. Right? So it's just probably the best thing if you wanted to actually implement Sap of the Seasons into your build in some way, shape, or form. Militant Fate, somewhere with a bunch of devotion, you get flat mana, you get reduction, you get one of these rings with 1 minus max mana roll, the other one can be whatever, and you're set. And you can essentially have your tincture go for like hundreds of percent, right? I'm not doing that because I wanted to test something else out. I wanted to test out Supreme Ostentation. This gives me no inherent bonuses from attributes, which means that my intelligence actually doesn't give me mana. If I remove this, okay, my whole build bricks. But anyway, intelligence does normally give a bunch of mana. So if I use this, I do reduce a little bit of mana, and then I can afford to run whatever I want when it comes to my items. And what I decided to go for with the items is the following. I decided to go for evasion energy shield for the suppression, but mostly like energy shield as well. I have a decent life pool, all things considered. I am a warden. Rangers are usually pretty bad when it comes to their like max hit, their like life total, right? They usually struggle with that. There is not a whole lot of max life on the tree for them. So I decided to try to solve that by going Supreme Ostentation, getting a bunch of ES on my gear, and then getting a Replica Soul Tether. Replica Soul Tether obviously gives me Corrupted Soul, and it gives me like 21% of max life extra max ES, right? So I have a pretty good amount of life and energy shield amount, right? This is almost 5k, not bad. Could be better, but still not bad for a ranger. And I'm obviously splitting the damage I take in half from Corrupted Soul. 50% bypasses, 50% doesn't bypass. And the way I'm regening both, usually the issue with hybrid life ES builds is that you can't regen both, or it's harder to regen both. The way I'm doing it is I'm using a Sorrow of the Divine and then a Life Flask. I yoinked. I didn't. Yeah, there you go. I yoinked Master Surgeon, so my flask just regens both life and energy shield, and it just keeps going when I'm max life. So my recovery is actually really good for this build. Um, Flask sustain is solved by this. Flasks adjacent to an active tincture gain 2 charges when you hit an enemy, right, with a melee weapon. So that's a lot. On paper, this is like 6 charges per second. Obviously, you would need to, you know, you need to like synchronize servertics or whatever. Anyway, it's a lot of flash charges. It's good enough. It's a shabby build, you know. It's like it's wacky. It's wacko. It is what it is. But I do get a lot of sustain out of it, right? Um, yeah, and that's just it's an interesting character. I do have suppression. I have flesh and stone. I have endurance charges. I have this thing right now, which gives me, this just gives me a like molten shell, but it's just better. So that's nice. And as far as other defenses go, like recovery definitely keeps my character alive more than anything. I have petrified blood. The reason I decided to go petrified blood is because I am I am reserving a bunch of life. Clarity gives flat mana regen per second, but it also costs flat mana to reserve, which we don't have because that's what we don't stack, flat mana. So this means that I have to reserve it from life. So I'm losing a bit of life with that, right? I'm also reserving precision with life. Um, should I do that? Should I not do that? I don't know. It's probably if I were to make this character good, I'd probably. That's by the way. Okay, whatever. I was just testing stuff there. That's probably like one of the changes I would make to this character is I would try to fit in accuracy somewhere and drop precision, right? I'm also using like clusters, just basic stuff, but just random stuff. I'm getting onslaught from clusters. I'm getting some leech. I'm getting fortify. Yeah, it's 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 a better build than I thought. I didn't make this build with the intent of breaking the meta. I just made this build with the intent of trying a few interactions out. I wanted to try Sap of the Seasons. I wanted to try this stuff with Corrupted Soul and recovery from flasks. Also, yeah, I do have flask effect duration on these nodes and flask life recovery rate. Yep, there you go. And that is because Supreme Ostentation allows me to run all tattoos because I don't need the attributes. Another thing it allows me to run is minus strength and minus attributes on these things. I don't care about that. Right? So it's an interesting build. Few key takeaways is Sap of the Seasons is actually still strong. If you just run Militant Fate and one of these rings, you essentially have like 200 pen. You probably don't even have to do, to be honest, you don't even have to like stack, um, you don't even have to stack tincture effect, to be completely honest with you. Tinctures are also strong. Yeah, thanks for watching.